What's up, YouTube? This is Stitch YouTube. Obviously, in my Volkswagen video, I told you we had videos that were going to keep coming doing DIYs. We did the Volkswagen video, and now we have this BMW that we're going to be doing a fuel sending unit replacement. I personally looked up on YouTube myself to see some DIYs on how to do it. Got that boy Juju. Alright, man. But essentially, I found a video, brief explanation, and I'm gonna show you guys a brief explanation as well. Big shout out to the boy E92 Fuel. Post his YouTube channel. Watching his video pretty much is helping me do this video, which we gotta have more than one video. Different people like to watch different videos on how to do it, and in this case, on this car is a 2008 335i. Fuel sending unit cap is leaking fuel, and also the low pressure fuel sensor, which is underneath the airbox, I think underneath the throttle body. That we just got to inspect that sensor, see if it's plugged in, because the previous owner did say he had fuel injectors replaced. So we got to double check and see if that connector got connected properly or that sensor's just bad, but we do have it just in case to replace it. But here in a second we'll hop in. Got the seats moved forward because we gotta jump in the back seat. We gotta pop the seat cushion behind the driver and passenger side to get to the fuel sending unit and the fuel pressure on the opposite side, and those two have to come off. All right, so to remove the seat cushions is real simple. I mean, this one's already removed, but all you have to do is reach your hand underneath the seat cushion and pull up, because the seat is held in by these little spring clips that is connected to here, and just simply pull up and then it comes off, and do the same thing for the opposite side. And then once that's said and done, flip the carpet up and you get you a 10mm and remove these 4 screws to remove this fuel sending unit metal plate, and then we'll reveal the fuel sending unit. Here we have the brand new sending unit that we're going to be putting in the car. On the old one, just around right here where my thumb is at, there's a slight crack. So once the car is running and the fuel's being pushed through, there's a slight crack right here where you can see the fuel leaking out of. And then we have a VSRF exhaust that we're going to end up putting on this car later. We got a new drive belt and the low pressure fuel sensor that we're going to be doing later after we do the fuel sending unit replacement. All right, guys, like I said, you got to use a 10mm. I got a 10mm socket here, magnetic socket, just to remove these plates. I already removed the passenger side. Here are the 4 nuts for that side, and then now I'm removing the ones behind the driver's side. All right, so next step, now that we have the lid open, and since I'm working by myself, it's hard to show you guys how to disconnect the fuel line, but you do want to disconnect the sensor. You want to push down on this retaining clip and then pull back on the fuel line to disconnect. There will be fuel leakage that purges out if you haven't depressurized your fuel system. And you can do that either by removing the fuel pump sensor and just cycle it so until the car doesn't want to start no more, so it flushes like all the fuel back into the system. But also right here, as I stated earlier, is the hairline crack where the fuel leaks out of when the car is running, and that's why we're replacing the fuel sending unit. And then once that is disconnected, if you don't have the fuel pump removal kit tool, you can get a big flathead and a hammer and just hit on these notches counterclockwise to loosen it, to remove the cap. And then you'll do the same thing on this side. Disconnect all the sensors, the lines, and same thing, hit the tabs to unscrew the fuel pump to get it out, because the fuel sending unit has hoses that's going to go from that side underneath to hook up to the fuel pump. So now I'm going to disconnect the lines and take the cap off, the retaining cap, and then when you replace it, there's O-rings to replace it with, and make sure you put new ones on, and I'll show you that once we get to that point. So on the fuel pump, obviously you disconnect the two connectors. This one has a little push pin on the front, if you can see that little blue one, and this big one has two white ones on the side that you just got to pinch and pull up, and then this one you got to push and then pull up to disconnect. Alright guys, so like I mentioned earlier, if you don't have the special tool that pretty much clamps onto these little notches, get you a little pry bar flathead with a little hammer and essentially just hammer on the notches until it turns all the way and loosens itself up the way this one is. Now we just got to repeat the same process on that side for the fuel pump side to get to the hoses that runs to this, and then pretty much all go in reverse order, putting everything back together. Alright guys, so my buddy Gustavo came in and figured he can hold the camera just so you guys can see what I was explaining on the opposite side. If you don't have the proper tool, either a flathead, pry bar, or hammer, get on the little notches and just hammer it until it turns off. As you can see, it slowly turns, and you just keep doing it until the cap itself is completely loose. And there, the cap is loose. Now we can get access to the fuel pump to get to the hoses that goes to the fuel sending unit on the opposite side. Now that we got the retaining cap off, you get access to the fuel sending unit itself. And as stated earlier, the crack is right here. Essentially, you got to get the leveling unit out of the sending unit out of the hole, and the rest of the hoses travels through the tank to the pump itself, where we have to disconnect, I believe, 2 hoses. And here's the pump itself, and I believe we'll reference the new fuel sending unit to make sure we know which 2 lines need to disconnect from the pump itself, so it releases and we pull the fuel sending unit out from this side to run the new one back through. Guys, so once you get into the fuel pump, the bottom half of the fuel pump, you'll see you'll see this white fitting. One of the lines that goes to the fuel sending unit is clipped in there, and then the other two hoses just gets clamped and held in place by little retaining place clamps right there. And then everything else is pretty much ran through the tank. On the new fuel sending unit, this is the hose, if it'll focus. This is the hose that will get clamped into that white sending unit right there. And these two hoses just gets clamped in place, being held at the bottom of the fuel pump. Here we have the new sending unit we're about to feed through. But since we broke the seal on both sending unit and fuel pump, make sure to replace these two O-rings on both sides. And now you just go in reverse order, prime the car, and that fixes our problem we had on this car of the fuel sending unit leaking. And please like, share, comment, subscribe. Big shout out to N54. I forget his full YouTube name, but I will tag his channel down in the description for his guidance on how to do this. But he has someone recording. I just had a friend show up at that last minute to show you guys what I was doing to remove the fuel pump cover. But other than that, until next video on the other project we're finna do on this car. My time is running short here at the shop, so we're gonna do this and call it a day. And then next video will probably be the low pressure fuel sensor that's in underneath the hood. And then I think we got a serpentine belt and some other things. But until next time.